Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Ganesh. Ganesh is a guardian in SMITE who's seen only in the support role. He focuses on high CC and moderate damage and is exceptional at peeling for his teammates and setting up kills. Build-wise, Ganesh goes for the same old. You want your auras, a counter item or two, and you typically want at least one damaging item, because despite his demeanor, Ganesh can put out a lot of damage. Relics wise, you start off with something like a shell or meditation depending on who you're against, then go something like a bracer of radiance for general aggression, or sunder if you have a more specific target you want to shred through. Shard wise, of course, it's just horn shard, it's nothing better. Let's get into a wonderfully simple passive in SMITE. Every time Ganesh gets a kill on any entity in the game, he grants that kill to the nearest ally god, up to 100 units of range, so he still can get kills, although it's a pretty significant range. Also, here's a quick breakdown on assists in SMITE so you can understand the next part of this passive. Basically, you get an assist on a kill by being in range of the kill, or if you leave the range but you have damaged a dead target, you have a timer which will still grant you the assist on the target if they die within that timer. Ganesh has both a longer range for assists and a longer timer, so he gets assists more easily too. Not much to say about it other than that it's the first of many reasons why Ganesh is great if you're new to support. No need to worry about kill stealing here. Plus, never forget that you can grant your teammates stacks on items like Devourer's Gauntlet as well, since you grant kills on everything, including minions. Ganesh can actually do this quite effectively with his first ability. Ganesh fires forward a slow-moving projectile which passes through walls and gods. So notably two things real quick. When I say slow, it is slow. So that can all make it a bit of a problem when you're trying to hit targets at the maximum range. That said, at least it's awfully wide, so despite its stubby range and slow speed, you can still hit plenty of ranged targets if you angle yourself properly. This is made better by the fact that Ganesh will grant himself and all allies nearby % bonus damage for every enemy hit by this ability for 4 seconds, granting 2% bonus damage per enemy hit and granting 4% for every enemy god hit, up to a total of 10% bonus damage, which, while not the most damage ever recorded, can be the difference maker between your ADC clearing or not clearing the wave. And even though it's boring, that's what this ability is best at, using it on the wave to grant your ADC the bonus damage, then having them clear the wave. Even if the bonus damage itself isn't enough to let your ADC full clear the wave at level 1 or anything, the damage on the ability itself is actually very respectable, easily able to suppress the wave enough for your allies to clear it instantly with their own wave clear, or just basic attack it down if they want to conserve their mana and abilities. And this is especially good with relevant ADCs like Ishtar, Ram, and especially Izanami, who specialize in basic attacking the wave down. But still, never forget to chuck it out in a fight, even one in the late game, just to let your team get that bit of extra damage, although obviously it's an ability that's more effective during the laning phase, and you should never use it in place of any of your other abilities when it comes to those late game team fights. Abilities such as Ganesh's second ability come to mind. Ganesh becomes knockup immune and grants all allies in a circle around him protections, and silences all enemies in a small triangle AoE in front of himself. This ability is purely based on timing, not much in the way of skill here. It's an ability you want to use early on in the fight, since it's a silence and all, it's a preventative measure. But at the same time, as you can tell, this is one of Ganesh's most potent abilities, but a way to counter it is simply waiting for the ability to end. So timing the ability is a mixture of preventing enemies from attacking you and your teammates, but not doing it so early that the enemy team could just back up for free or just keep walking forward and just wait out the ability. Being careful about enemy hard CC is important too. As I mentioned earlier, he's knockup immune, which is great, but he's still completely open to other forms of hard CC, and soft CC like slows too. Even just a root will stop him dead in his tracks and make the ability a dud. Sometimes there's not much you can do about this, like against an Erlang Shen root or a Thor stun, which outrange this ability. But in other cases, make sure to try silencing anyone who can hard CC you out of the ability, in addition to any enemies that could cause your teammates trouble. Speaking of which, don't forget about the bonus protections too. The silence is absolutely what you want to focus on, but don't forget that the protections boost can be the difference maker in fights, so when all of your other abilities are down and you can't get into a fight quickly to silence an enemy, pop this ability to give your teammates some extra protections while you make your way deeper into the fight. Luckily, Ganesh can get himself into fights easily with his third ability. Ganesh dashes forward and is able to pass through any god-made structures like Ymir or Yamoja walls with this ability. The ability goes through and damages enemy minions but stops on map walls and enemy gods. When Ganesh hits an enemy god, he stuns him for 1 second and knocks him up into the air, dealing light damage over time during the duration. This is Ganesh's best and worst asset at the same time. This is Ganesh's only way to lock down a target, and it can only hit one target, and it's not fast, lacks range, and requires Ganesh to use his only movement ability. And unless you're like me, the enemy you hit can use their purification beads on the stun section of the dash to avoid the more important knockup section. So in a lot of ways, the ability is no better than a lot of other Guardian CC abilities, again especially because it only hits one target. This is worsened when you consider using it as an escape. Ganesh can easily be body blocked, especially when you consider that the dude's an elephant and as a result is quite wide. And again, slow and not long ranged, so it's hardly a guaranteed way to save yourself as a Ganesh player. So with that in mind, unless things are going very badly, try to keep this as an aggressive option rather than a defensive one. And remember, if you use it as peel, you're giving up your only escape to peel for your team, so prioritize your second ability when on the defensive. Ganesh seems rather weak at this point, a damaging ability which is nearly pointless out of lane, and 2 CC abilities which are easily countered. Luckily, his ultimate ties absolutely everything together and plugs up a lot of his weaknesses. Ganesh spawns 4 pillar structures, which cannot be walked through, and between each pillar is a thin rectangle AoE, creating a square AoE with the pillars on each corner. These sections between the pillars on the outside of the squares deal damage to all enemies currently on them every half second, with the initial damage dealing bonus damage. Any enemies hit by this ability are also slowed and have their protections reduced. So yeah, if you're on the receiving end of this, you really don't want to get hit with that. This is easier to avoid for some characters than it is for others. Of course, if you box in a character with a leap or a teleport, they'll just exit it with no problems, but gods with dashes, or god forbid no movement ability at all, are in serious trouble and will almost certainly have to use their purification beads to exit safely. So this matters on 2 levels. For one, don't pick Ganesh into characters who can very easily avoid this ability, and secondly, when you're in a situation where you have to use this ability on them, keep some combos in mind. Placing one of the edges directly on a target isn't easy, but there's plenty of times where you'll want to do that in order to execute fast combos. You can either use the ultimate and then immediately 3 on top of them. Remember that you can go through your own pillars with this dash, or, if you're closer, simply use your silence on them as they're in the ultimate to ensure they use their purification beads. So of course this ability is great for singling out squishies, especially when you're in range to follow up off of them. But don't forget too that it's great for breaking teamfights apart. And that's what this ability is used for most of the time, forcing the enemy team to either split up or give them an area they simply can't go into because of the ultimate. This means that you can place it right on top of one of your teammates after you get engaged on, meaning that the enemy team can't help their teammates who just dove your team. Or if you get jumped on, place it on yourself so that the enemy team can't follow up easily and they're forced away. Then finally, the most annoying, effective part is having your team escape or having your team chase the enemy team through the jungle. The size of this ability means that escaping into or out of the jungle is almost a sure thing from your side, unless the enemy team wants to burn all their slow and or CC immunities just to get through the ultimate to kill your team. And not to mention the ultimate itself does respectable damage and shreds protections, meaning any retaliation from your team is extra effective if the enemy team is too overzealous. Oh, and I know someone will mention it, you can put the ability on objectives when they're around 2000 health for a decent objective secure. But for me, the ultimate is a little too useful in fights to just blow it on the objective, so just let your mage confirm it for you. You know, if they're paying attention. Ganesh's ultimate sounds like something you need to use every single fight, and frankly, it is, but luckily, the ultimate has a mere 75-second base cooldown, so while you shouldn't use it every time it's up, it's always better to be safe than sorry with this ability and just use it when your team needs some peel or you think you can single out and kill an enemy god with it. Let's see how that's done with some combos with Ganesh. 3, 2, 1. If they have no movement abilities, 1, 3, 2. Ult, 3, 2, 1. If they have no movement abilities, ult, 1, 3, 2. For ability leveling, you want your 1 at level 1, your 3 at level 2, and your 2 at level 3. From there you want to max your 1, your 2, then your 3, leveling up the ultimate whenever you can. Ganesh is a great support to pick up whether you're new to the role or just looking for someone new and fun. He's a very balanced character, in case you didn't notice. He's good but not unbeatable in his good matchups, and weak but not unplayable in his bad matchups. That said, his counters are quite pronounced, so you have to be careful. Picking him too early in your drafts is almost certainly going to get you against long-range CC, or leaps, or teleports, or god forbid a cripple so you can't even use your 3. And they may just pick Vaman, who's still in the meta by the way. But then he's also super effective against other meta picks such as Susano and Martikaras. So it's going to take some time to understand who he will and won't mark into, but a big plus to Ganesh is that he's always a great asset to his own team. Obviously granting kills to his teammates is fun and all, but the big factor in his 2 and his ultimate just being big no buttons to enemies trying to kill your teammates is a big bonus at any match. That's part of what makes Ganesh such a good god for beginners too, since he can play so reactively and let the enemy team make the first move and almost always have a good answer for it. Unless you're against Vaman. That's all I have on Ganesh for now. Thanks for watching.